I, 35-year-old female, have a son, 18-year-old male, and a husband, 45-year-old male, who I'm attempting to divorce. I met my husband when I was 16 at the church in my hometown. At 17, he invited me over, and I don't remember it well, but we ended up sleeping together. I was supposed to be cleaning his house for some extra pocket change, but ended up pregnant. I still can't remember everything that happened, but when my parents found out, they confronted him and made me marry him. I had my son not much longer after that. My husband is a brute. He was always mean to me. I tried my best to make him happy. I'd cook his favorite foods, clean the house extra nice, do childcare work to make a few dollars to buy him a treat or two. But if I made one mistake he didn't like, he'd hit me. I used to cry to my father about it, but he'd tell me it's my punishment for having premarital intimacy. I'd ask my father what my husband's punishment was, and he'd say, "His punishment is having to settle for you." I don't think I ever recovered from that. Before anyone asks about my mother has always been kind of out of it. She's been on medication since I was a child, and she's kind of like a zombie. She doesn't talk much or do much of anything unless my father says so. She was different when I was little, but I hardly remember those days. The hitting got worse, to the point where I wasn't really allowed to leave the house, or if I did, I had to wear makeup, or else my husband would think I was trying to get him in trouble. My son grew up watching this. I've heard stories of kids hating their hurtful fathers, but my son loved his father more than he loved me. I never wanted my son to hate his father, but he started acting out, and eventually he started laying hands on me. My son started hitting me when he was 10. It was light, and I'd tell him to stop, but as he got older, he started beating me. If I told him no, he'd beat me. If I didn't do something he wanted, he'd slap or kick me and even punch me. And my husband would back him up a lot of the time. He'd say, "He's just learning to be a man. He'll stop when he's older and has his own wife." It got to the point where I was terrified of my baby. The only thing in this world I ever got to make, and he terrified me. When he was 16, he broke my arm really bad because I showed my husband his report card. My husband disciplined him but never told me how. I grew to hate my son so much every day, but I still tried to be good to him, to help him. He didn't want that. I couldn't make him want that. I couldn't sleep or eat without dreaming of my son and husband hurting me. My son once pinned me on the ground because I had asked him to help me lift something. I'm frail, so I can't lift much. When he pinned me, he hit me a lot, and I could feel it hurting me aroused him. He humped me for a few seconds, and then he started screaming at me, saying it was all my fault, and locked himself in his room. I didn't tell my husband. I should have, but somehow I felt like I would have just gotten hurt worse, either by my sons or my husband. He was 17 when this happened, so last year. After his 18th in January, I packed a bag and wandered off into the night. I don't have friends. My father wouldn't help me even if I told him these things. I slept on a park bench and went to the library and looked up a women's shelter. I worked really hard and got a studio apartment. I don't know how, but my son found me. He spent hours at my door knocking and crying for me, calling me mama. He hadn't called me that in years. I was terrified he'd break the door down and drag me back to the house, but my neighbors made him leave. My son has somehow gotten my number, and now he, my husband and father, and some of my son's friends are texting me and calling me horrible names. My son says I'm a bad mother for running away and not loving him the way he loves me. My husband says he won't grant me a divorce and that he'll take whatever I have right now and that I've failed as a woman. My father says I'll die alone because I'm a bad woman. My father even got my mother on the phone to speak to me. She's all pilled out though, so I shouldn't take her words to heart, but she says that a woman can never abandon her child no matter how painful life gets. She told me when my father hurt her, she never left me. So I was a coward and a failure for leaving my son. She said she could forgive divorce but not leaving my baby behind. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the jerk. You have been abused by every man in your life. Your father, your husband, and your son. Don't listen to your mother. She sounds thoroughly brainwashed and possibly abused herself. You're worth so much more than this. You were groomed, possibly attacked by a man 10 years older than you when you were still a child. Your parents, instead of helping you, punished you. Your husband carried on the abuse. In some ways, I feel for your son when he was younger. Your husband has screwed him up, but you can't and shouldn't go back because of him. He's an adult now, capable of doing you great harm and still blaming you. Every single one of them is wrong. You deserve to live a life without being in fear every day. Other comments have made good suggestions about where to get support. Please reach out. You really do deserve some peace in your life. They do not. Comment 2. He doesn't have to grant you a divorce. My ex-husband wouldn't sign the papers, and after 2 years, I was granted the divorce. I'm very proud of you for leaving this hurtful situation. It takes a lot. You have been groomed since you were a child that you deserve to be treated poorly. You don't. You deserve to be treated kindly and with love. I'm sorry that your family is completely awful. I hope you have found support to help you through this. If not, I hope you have a therapist who can assist you, but you know you're going to have to move and change your number. And I know that that's awful as well. Now, for the update. Hey there. Thanks for the update. I'm sorry to hear about the continued difficulties you're facing. Let me dive right into what's been happening over the past few days. The day after I posted my original story, my son showed up at my apartment again. This time, he had his father with him. They pounded on the door for what felt like hours, shouting for me to let them in, that I belonged with them. My husband kept yelling that I was still his wife and had no right to leave. My son alternated between angry demands and tearful pleas, saying he needed his mama. I was shaking, terrified they would break down the door. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, my husband and son were gone. The officers took a report, but said there wasn't much they could do unless my husband and son tried to enter my apartment. They suggested I look into a restraining order. After they left, I broke down sobbing, feeling so helpless and alone. How had my life come to this? Hiding from my own family, the people who were supposed to love and protect me. The next morning, I steeled my resolve and went to the courthouse to file for a restraining order. As I waited in line, I couldn't help but think back on my marriage. I remembered how excited I was on my wedding day, so young and naive, believing my husband's promises that he would always take care of me. But our vows had been empty words. He only wanted to control me, to mold me into his idea of a perfect, obedient wife. And when I failed to live up to his impossible standards, he turned to violence to keep me in line. I thought about my son and how much I loved him despite everything. When he was born, I swore I would give him a better life than I had. I dreamed of the close bond we would share, how I would support him and watch him grow into a good man. Instead, my husband poisoned him against me, twisting his mind until he saw me as nothing more than a punching bag, a thing to be used. My heart ached with the knowledge that I had failed my boy. Maybe if I had been stronger, if I had left sooner, I could have saved him from his father's influence. Lost in my painful memories, I almost didn't notice when my name was called. I filed the paperwork for the restraining order with shaking hands. The sympathetic look from the clerk only made me feel more pathetic. Was this what my life had been reduced to? A battered woman seeking protection from the law because her family refused to leave her in peace? I wish I could say things improved after that, but they only got worse. My father started leaving me angry voicemails, ranting about what a disgrace I was. He called me an intimacy worker for leaving my husband, said I was spitting on the sacred vows of marriage. He even showed up at my work, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted him out. I was mortified, sure that I would lose my job. Thankfully, my boss was understanding, but I could see the pity in my coworkers' eyes. I hated it, hated that my dirty laundry was being aired for all to see. The final blow came last night. I was leaving the women's shelter after a support group meeting when I found my son waiting for me in the parking lot. Before I could react, he grabbed me and shoved me up against a car. "You selfish witch," he snarled in my face. "You abandoned me, your own son!" His grip on my arms was bruising, his eyes rough with rage. I pleaded with him to let me go, but he wasn't listening. In that moment, I saw my husband and my son's twisted features. The same anger, the same desire to dominate and control. I knew then that I had to make a choice. I could go back with my son and resign myself to a life of abuse and misery, or I could fight to break free, even if it meant losing him forever. Sobbing, I kneed him in the groin and pushed him away. "I can't do this anymore," I cried. "I love you, but I won't let you hurt me again. Please get help, before it's too late." Then I ran to my car and drove away, my son's anguished cries ringing in my ears. I barely made it back to my apartment before I collapsed, overwhelmed with grief and pain. I had lost my son, maybe for good. But I knew I had made the right choice for myself. I couldn't save him from the cycle of abuse if I was still trapped in it myself. I don't know what the future holds. I'm still scared, still hurting, but for the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. I'm going to get a divorce, get therapy, build a new life for myself. It won't be easy, but I have to believe that I'm strong enough to do it. Thank you for listening and for all your support. It means more than you know. Ida for kicking my husband out and not letting him back in to get his stuff after I found out he cheated with a man. My husband cheated with a man. I had pictures. His mom snooped. His parents are making his life difficult. I, female, 30 years old, kicked my husband, 28 years old, out of my house. It was my house prior to us getting married, and it remains my house now. I knew when I married him that he was bisexual. I was okay with it as long as he understood that we were monogamous. I said that I would never agree to an open relationship, and if that was what he wanted, he needed to be with someone else. He agreed and said that I was the person he wanted to be with, and that I was more than enough to satisfy him. He lied. I found out he was having an affair with a man. I went through his iPad and took all the pictures for myself. Graphic, in a Mapplethorpe kind of way. When I confronted him, he became physically aggressive. I was scared. He calmed down when I got Siri to call 911. He left. Anyway, I did not want him in my house again, ever. When he wanted his things, I asked him to make a list and send it to me. I found every single thing on the list. I asked him where to send the box. He said he would pick it up. I told him that I would not let him set foot in my house and that I would call the cops if he tried. He said he would send friends to get his stuff. I said I would leave his box of crap with the front desk at my work. He didn't want to make them drive into the city. We compromised, and I agreed to give his parents a temporary code for my house. They are lovely people, and I trusted them. I could see everything on my security system, and I would know if he tried getting into my house. The deal was that they would use the code, get the box from the front entrance, then close and lock the door. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Instead, it went difficult. Difficult lemon sucked. I guess he didn't have everything on his list. He asked them to get something from my bedroom. Not the deal at all. I had my pictures of his infidelity in my room in my chest of drawers, in an envelope. So, to reiterate, to find these pictures, his mom had to go past our agreed limit into my house. She then had to enter my bedroom, open my chest of drawers, open an envelope, and look at what was inside. I felt violated watching the video. Then I giggled like a little kid. It was hilarious. I see them come into the house. They use the code and open the door. His dad comes in and grabs the box. He goes back to their vehicle with the box. His mom hesitates before walking into my house and going to my room. She goes to my chest and opens the top drawer where we kept a box full of jewelry. She sees an envelope with his name on it. She looks around. I'm not sure why. Then she looks at the contents. She screams, I assume, since I have my feed on video only. Then she stuffs the pictures back in, closes the drawer, and goes running for the truck. My father-in-law comes to the door, locks it, and leaves. I guess he never told his parents about his interests, preferences. To say that this has created a problem for him is to take it lightly. I get a call from him. He says I left the pictures out for his parents to find. I did not. I should have scattered them on top of the box his parents picked up, but that felt cruel and unnecessary. Like I said, I have always found them to be lovely people. I told him where the pictures were. He said that he forgot about a ring he left off the list, and he told his mom where it should be. I said I would have tossed it in the box if he told me. He said he forgot until they were on their way. He is upset that his parents know he is a submissive partner in an intimacy relationship. He is not happy at their house now, and he is going to find somewhere else to stay. He said I'm a jerk for causing this problem. I think there are other candidates for assholehood. 1, him for cheating. 2, him for getting his parents to go against our agreement. 3, his mom for going against our agreement. 4, his mom for snooping. 5, his parents for homophobia. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. The universe clearly has a sense of humor, and if they didn't poke their noses where they didn't belong, they never would have known. That's 100% on them snooping where they knew they weren't allowed. Comment 2. How dare you put pictures in a drawer in an envelope for his mom to snoop and find? This is all your fault. The cheating is all your fault too, in his head. I'm sure. Frick this guy, not the idiot. Now for the update. Hey there, thanks for reading. It's been a week since I last updated you on my situation with my cheating husband. Well, let me tell you, things have only gotten more complicated. After his parents found those graphic pictures of him with another man, they kicked him out of their house. Apparently, they couldn't handle the fact that their son was not only bisexual, but also a submissive partner in his affair. He called me up furious, blaming me for his current predicament. He said I had no right to keep those pictures, and that I should have destroyed them. I reminded him that he was the one who cheated and that his actions had consequences. But that's not all. A few days later, I received a call from his lover, the man he had been seeing behind my back. He introduced himself as Alex and said he needed to talk to me urgently. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. When I arrived, I was surprised to see how young he was, probably in his early 20s. Alex told me that he and my husband had been seeing each other for months and that he had no idea my husband was married. He said he felt terrible and wanted to apologize for his role in the affair. As we talked, Alex revealed something that shocked me to my core. He said that my husband had been planning to leave me for him, and that they had even looked at apartments together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband had not only cheated on me, but had also been planning a whole new life without me. I felt like such a fool. But the biggest news was yet to come. Alex told me that he had recently found out that he was virus positive, and that he had likely contracted the virus from my husband. He said he had gotten tested after experiencing some symptoms, and that the results had come back positive. I was stunned. My mind raced with the implications of this revelation. Had my husband known he was virus positive? Had he been putting me at risk all this time? I confronted my husband with this new information, and he broke down in tears. He said he had found out he was virus positive a few months ago, but had been too scared to tell me. He said he didn't want to lose me and thought that if I found out, I would leave him. He admitted that he had been reckless and selfish, and that he knew he had put me at risk. I was furious. I couldn't believe he had kept something so important from me. I felt betrayed and scared for my own health. I got tested immediately, and thankfully the results came back negative. But the trust between us was shattered. Looking back, I realized there had been signs that something was off in our relationship. My husband had become distant and secretive, often staying out late and making excuses for his absences. He had also been more irritable and quick to anger, picking fights over the smallest things. I had chalked it up to stress at work, but now I knew the real reason behind his behavior. As I grappled with this new reality, I couldn't help but think back to our early days together. We had been so in love, so happy. I remembered the day he proposed, how he had gotten down on one knee in front of all our friends and family. I had thought we would be together forever. But now, I realized that our entire marriage had been built on a lie. I knew I had a difficult decision to make. Could I forgive my husband for his betrayal? Could I trust him again? Or was it time to walk away and start a new chapter in my life? I didn't have any easy answers, but I knew I needed to take some time to think things through. In the meantime, I asked my husband to move out of our shared apartment. I needed space to process everything that had happened and to figure out what I wanted. He agreed, albeit reluctantly, and said he would stay with a friend until I was ready to talk. As I sat in our empty apartment, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. But I also knew that I had to be strong and do what was best for me. Whatever happened next, I knew I would survive and come out stronger on the other side. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for listening and for all your support during this difficult time. I'll keep you updated as things progress. Ita for declining marriage counseling and a house down payment from my ex-wife's family after she believed a psychic over me. I met my wife, Rona, when we were in college together. I made the obviously terrible assumption that the fact she was in post-secondary education meant she had a modicum of common sense. We started dating our senior year, and after job hunting, settled on moving back to her hometown after graduating. We found an apartment and lived together for 2 years before getting married. All good so far. At our wedding, I met an old friend of hers, Anna. She offered to read my palm since she was part gypsy. Weird. I am in construction and I know a few people from that group. and they call themselves Roma. Whatever. Anna only comes to town every once in a while. She lives in NYC, so she doesn't have time to visit since she has an exciting life there. She makes costumes for plays and cosplayers. So we see her maybe 4 times over the next 2 years. The last time she came was Labor Day last year, and that's when it got weird. All of a sudden, Rona starts acting oddly. She starts checking in on me at work, coming by when I'm working late, asking to use my phone because hers is almost out of power, that sort of thing. She finally comes out and accuses me of having an affair. I thought she was joking, so I laugh and say that I am not. This sets her off like a Roman candle. Because Anna told her I would laugh it off when Rona came for the truth. I laughed because it was ridiculous. I barely had time for a relationship with my wife and my job. I am home all weekend long. When I go golfing, her brother is almost always either in my foursome or at the club. And most important of all, I love my wife. I wouldn't do anything to harm her. And yet, she takes the word of Anna, the psychic seamstress, over mine. She asks me to leave our apartment. I say no because I have nowhere else to go. So she leaves and moves back with her parents. They think she is nuts too. I spent the next few months working and trying to convince her that I'm not cheating and that I want her to come home. I don't get invited to Thanksgiving because it would be awkward. I didn't even stick around for Christmas. I went home to see my family. They have been following all this stupidity without commenting until then. At Christmas, they had an intervention. They said my wife was having a break from reality and that she wasn't coming out of it. My dad told me to give my head a shake, which he only does when I am being monumentally stupid. When I got back, I went to a lawyer and started my divorce. That was in January. Finally, at the beginning of April, Rona calls me to talk. I say that we should talk through lawyers. She starts to cry, and I agree to meet her in public if she will allow me to record our conversation so I can give a copy to my lawyer. She eventually agreed. Turns out she and her parents hired a private detective to find evidence of my affair. 6 months and a huge bill later, 0 evidence of an affair. She finally believes me and wants to come home. I tell her that our lease is up in July, and I already found a job in Denver near my family. She says she would come with me. I respectfully declined. I told her we just weren't right for each other. The truth is, I do not want to have my offspring share DNA with this dingbat. Anyway, I am moving ahead with my divorce. I am gutted that she took her friend's psychic vibrator over mine. Her family has approached me several times. The last time, her dad offered to front us a 25% down payment on a house if I agree to go to marriage counseling instead of just leaving. I politely declined. I cannot be bought. Rona is now depressed, but I see no way of ever trusting her again. She is young enough she can marry again and wreck some other guy's life. Am I the idiot? #edit. I meant to write psychic vibrations, not psychic vibrator, but I like the idea better the way I accidentally wrote it, so it stands. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Absolutely not the jerk. At least you found out before having kids. I can only imagine how that relationship would have been going forward. Every new magazine quiz or daytime talk show would lead to a new accusation. Comment 2. Not the jerk. And in a weird way, dude, Anna helped you out in dodging a nuke. Glad it happened earlier in your relationship and not after you guys intertwined even further like kids, house, etc. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a busy 3 days since my last update and I've got some news to share. Thanks for sticking with me through all this craziness. So, after Rona's dad offered to help with a down payment on a house if I agreed to marriage counseling, I had a lot to think about. I mean, a 25% down payment is no joke, and part of me wondered if I should give it a shot. But deep down, I knew I couldn't trust Rona anymore, not after she believed her friend's crazy accusations over me. Anyway, I decided to take a risk and meet up with Rona one last time to see if there was any chance of salvaging our relationship. We met at a coffee shop, and I told her I needed to know everything that happened between her and Anna. Turns out, Anna had been filling Rona's head with all sorts of nonsense, telling her that I was secretly in love with someone else and that our marriage was doomed. Rona broke down and admitted that she had been struggling with anxiety and depression for years, even before we met. She said that when Anna started telling her all these things, it just fed into her worst fears and insecurities. She knew it was irrational, but she couldn't help but believe it. I listened to her and I felt for her, I really did. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that our trust had been broken beyond repair. I told her that I understood where she was coming from, but that I didn't think I could ever fully trust her again. We talked for hours, going back and forth, trying to figure out if there was any way to make things work. But in the end, we both knew it was over. Rona said she was going to start seeing a therapist to work on her mental health, and I told her I hoped she found the help she needed. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and a whole lot of uncertainty about the future. But I knew I had made the right decision for myself, even if it meant giving up on our marriage. The next day, I started packing up my things and getting ready to move to Denver. It was bittersweet, leaving behind the life I had built with Rona, but I knew it was time for a fresh start. I called my parents and told them everything that had happened. They were supportive, as always, but I could tell they were worried about me. My dad reminded me that I was still young and had my whole life ahead of me, and that I would find happiness again someday. As I loaded the last of my boxes into the moving truck, I took one last look around the apartment that had been my home for the past few years. It was empty now, just like my heart. But I knew that with time, I would heal and move on. So that's where things stand now. I'm on my way to Denver, ready to start a new chapter in my life. It's not going to be easy, but I know I'll get through it. Thanks again for all your support and kind words. It means more than you know. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.